when we're talking about like Dzogchen, the path of joy and ease, the way certain words are understood is different in the sutra and the tantra, right? So one really clear and obvious example is the word yoga. So in the sutra, yoga means union of two things. And usually what they're talking about is the breath and the mind, or the body and the body, including breath and the mind, the union of those things, right? In things like Guru Yoga, it's talking about the union of the student's or disciple's mind and the teacher's mind, right? Two separate things in union. However, in Dzogchen, the word, so when Padmasambhava, Vimalamitra, and Vivekana and Shantarakshita went to Tibet, right? They're not Tibetans. So when things were translated into Tibetan under their guidance, it was the Dzogchen flavor that everything got, because they were all Dzogchenpas. When Buddhism went to Tibet, every one of them who transmitted it was a Dzogchenpa, practicing Dzogchen as their main practice. You know, this is 750 CE when the Dharma first went to Tibet. There was already Chan in Tibet, but when it really became established, it was through those Dzogchenpas. Now, so that means that these words in Sanskrit, right, that are being translated in Tibetan, they're being translated into Tibetan with a Dzogchen flavor, which is why when you look at words like, when you stay with yoga, in Tibetan is Naljor, right? When you look at that word, it's like, it's not a literal translation of yoga. It doesn't mean union of two things. So this is a problem. So in the Dzogchen teachings, we use these words like Naljor in the way it was originally intended, not in the way that the word yoga is used. So Naljor doesn't mean union of two things. But if we but often translators will go, Naljor, that's yoga in Sanskrit, and that's what they do, you know. But actually, literally, Naljor means to grasp pristine awareness, to understand, to possess is not quite right, but to get, or to know one's fundamental condition. It's not about the union of two things at all, because Dzogchen doesn't have two things that need to be unified. It just has the one thing, the fundamental condition. So there's a bit of a problem when you see Dzogchen texts translated into English, words like Naljor get translated as yoga, you know, because also yoga implies something needs to be done. Whereas the word Naljor means to possess one's, to grasp or to understand or get, I don't know how we can say this, but, or also actually to abide in one's natural condition, you know, but it's not really a verb. There's no doing in the way that the word yoga has doing going on. You've got to do something for this to happen, you know. So this is a bit of a problem. Now, the word for shamatha, shine in Tibetan, is not the word that we use in when we're talking about meditation in Dzogchen. We use this word Nepa, N-E-P-A, Nepa. Now, the reason that's important is because Nepa doesn't mean to doesn't mean concentration. When you translate the word shamatha, you usually get calm abiding, but often there's this idea of meditative concentration that comes with that word, but that's not there in Nepa. It's to rest in calm. There's a sense of being calm, abiding in a restful state. So Longchenpa calls it natural motionlessness, this Nepa meditation, natural motionlessness. And what's he talking about? He's talking about the body being still, the mind being still, though there's a different relationship to thought than to in classical shamatha, and the energy being still or calm, right? When we talk about Nepa, that is simply to go to your natural still state, to just chill, to relax, to rest in ease, and then naturally the energy, the speech, I think I can't remember the phrase used, but it naturally gathers in one place is kind of the phrase they use. And where's the place? The heart. So energy also naturally gathers there. just by resting, just by being calm, you know, and that's the object of all of the yogas. So Sa, Lung, Trul, Core, Tu, Mo, all of those physical yogas. The goal of it, bring energy to the heart chakra and allow it to settle there. So in Nepa, or this simple resting meditation, calm abiding, that happens naturally just by being restful. So in your level 1 readings, there's a reading by Mipam Rinpoche where he talks about how that is true, that just sitting in this way means you don't need to do Salung, you don't need to do Trul Core, you don't need to do Tumo, you don't need to do all those other things, because guess what? Those are Tantra. That's not what we're doing. So everything just sort of settles naturally in this way of meditating. Now, also with Shamata, you focus on your breath, right? But in Nepa, we say, place your awareness gently on your breathing. It's slightly, do you see the slight difference? It's not constitutive. It's not tight. It's relaxed and open. You just let your awareness settle on your breathing, not the breath, but on your breathing, on the whole experience of your body breathing. And so, and the traditional metaphor is like a snowflake landing on a lake. You see how gentle that is? And what happens to the snowflake when you do that? It becomes the lake. So just by resting, by placing your awareness naturally on the breathing, there's a non-duality there. I won't say union, but the non-duality, the true non-duality becomes clear, obvious. Now, in Nepa, it's all about rest. I'm always going on about the 7 factors of awakening, which is in the early sutras. These are the things the Buddha said are absolutely essential to awakening. On that list is passaddhi, relaxation. Now, passaddhi is not some esoteric thing. It's just to be relaxed. That's all it is. It's not some high spiritual thing. It's just be relaxed, to relax, to rest. Also on that is joy. Now, this is different. In the 4 immeasurables in the Mahayana tradition, they talk about joy, and they use the word mudita, which has a connotation of gladness for others' happiness, others' well-being. So they translate it often as appreciative joy, right? But in the list of 7 factors of awakening, it's not called mudita, it's called priti, P-R-I-T-I, priti, which just means somatic joy, to feel joy. It's not cognitive. It's not appreciating someone else's well-being, someone else's happiness, although that's a very good thing. It's just to be in a state of joyful delight. This is also on the 7 factors of awakening. And in the sutra where the Buddha talks about the 4 immeasurables, the interesting thing about the 4 immeasurables is that they're pre-Buddhist. They're the only thing the Buddha kept from Hinduism. Everything else he rejected. The Hindu idea of karma, he booted out. The Hindu notion of purification, he booted out. The Hindu notion of purification rites, chucked it. The only thing he kept from Hinduism was the 4 immeasurables, the Brahma Viharas, abodes of delight, because he recognized these reflect my experience of awakening. And in the sutra where he talks through these Brahma Viharas, he makes it very clear that you can start on any one and they will lead you through all the yanas, the meditative absorptions, right? To enlightenment. So he's clearly saying you can start with any of these Brahma Viharas or immeasurables and meditate on them, and they will lead you through all the yanas to enlightenment, and they're also, he doesn't say this explicitly, but they're co-emergent. So when you have joy, you have love. and compassion and evenness. When you have love, you have joy and compassion and evenness. When you have compassion, you have love and joy and evenness. When you have evenness, you have joy, love, and compassion. They're co-emergent, you know. So traditionally, in the Mahayana, you start with love, loving kindness, because that's considered easy because we all love somebody, right? But Dzogchen Amtrun taught that we start with joy, and he didn't give explicit reasons, but the reasons are becoming obvious to me, talking to all of you. A lot of people have quite complicated relationships with love, in the West in particular. The people we love have hurt us often. The people we love, we have lost often. The people we love have betrayed us often. The people we love have disappointed us often, whereas the sort of, it's a complicated thing here in the West because it's all mixed up with like romance and attachment and all this other stuff, But joy is more fundamental. We've never been betrayed by joy. We've never been disappointed by joy. We've never had joy cheat on us, So we've never had joy leave us for someone younger and prettier, So it's more likewise with love. Like we love our children. I don't have actual children, but I have nephews and nieces who I adore, and I have animals, And there's always so much grief around, our children and our animals, And there's often I often talk to my sisters about this, and they always sort of bring it up. I can't remember how they put it, but it's there's always an anxiety, a worry about what's going to happen to them in the world. What will happen to their children as they grow up? Will the world be fair to them? Will the world be kind to them? There's always, with children and your dependents in general, a worry, a worry. So, but joy doesn't worry you. It's very simple. It's more fundamental to who we are. So although Dzogchen Amtrun didn't point that out explicitly, it's become clear to me after talking to a lot of people over the years and talking to those of you in the program that actually love is hard for you and isn't always a restful experience. So joy is a good way, a better place to start for us. So that's it. So now, Nepa. The way we do meditation in this Sangha is from the Dzogchen Semde tradition, right? So this is very simple. Guru Rinpoche said this, and he said it to Yeshe Sogyal, and she transcribed it and sent it on to all of us. So whatever position feels best is best. So there's no like, oh, you have to be in lotus posture. You have to be, rigidly upright. You have to have your eyes a certain way, tongue a certain way, everything all a certain way. He said, whatever feels best is best. That being said, if you are not a physically active person, then the 7-point posture of Vairochana is very wise because it helps to settle energies and relax the muscles. Whereas sitting in a very sort of rigid lotus posture is actually bad on your knees and bad on your hips over time, over decades, Whereas a 7-point posture of Vairochana, which can be a bit flexible, it means that those problems often don't arise. Now, again, the Buddha said, you can meditate sitting, you can meditate standing, you can meditate walking, you can meditate lying down. These are the 4. So let's not fall into the trap of thinking that it has to be sitting. That is not true. According to Parmesan Baba, whatever position feels best is best. Hi, Mel. I'm just letting you know that this is not a meditation session. We're doing a teaching for our program, but you're welcome to stay.
I might leave then. Thank you.
Okay, bye. So, yeah. So, in Nepa, the awareness we place on breathing is very gentle, really, really gentle. And this phrase, if thought comes, let it come, but then let it go again, that's straight from the Dzogchen Semde. So it's a different attitude towards thought than in traditional shamatha. In traditional shamatha, we're like, oh, if you find yourself thinking, you go back to your object, very kind of like, bang, cut off thought. But no, you just let thought take its own time in this process. It'll come, of course it will. It'll abide for a while, but then it will dissolve of its own accord. So there's no intervention needed. In traditional shamatha, you intervene. You stop the distraction. It's called a distraction. Thought is a distraction. And you go back to your object, right? But this is like, no, no, no. It's okay. It'll just go on its own. And when it goes on its own, then you go back to your awareness on your breathing. You just let that be. You know, you're aware of it while it's there, and you just let it go on its own. No intervention. That's the difference between Nepa and Shamatha. Of course, obviously, I've always been saying this is Shamatha and this is how we meditate and blah, blah. But if you go to other traditions and learn Shamatha, you'll notice the difference. It is quite different. The way we've been doing it in this Sangha all along has always been Dzogchen style. So then the other thing about Nepa that's different to Shamatha is the view. So in Shamatha, they have a view of impermanence, anatta or non-self, as the main kind of foundation. And it's in the background of their mind and they sit, right? Our view is the same, though the approach is different, right? We're not approaching it through having it as an intellectual understanding in the back of our mind. We're approaching it by opening. So, you know, the message of impermanence and anatta or shunyata is not an intellectual one. The message is open up, let go. So don't close your eyes, open up. Don't block out sound, open up. Just be aware of it when it happens. You know, don't try and block thought, open up. You know, the message of shunyata and anatta, non-self, is open up, let go. You know, that's the message in this tradition. So we have that open attitude. If someone starts a lawnmower, I live in suburbia, so that happens all the time. You just go, you know, fine. Now that's an object of my awareness. Fine. And, you know, like everything else, it will go away eventually, but you don't need it to because you're open. You know, likewise, a dog starts barking. That just becomes an ornament of your awareness. You know, it's all just an ornament of one's awareness. It just comes and goes and you don't worry about it. You know, it's all cool. You just relax. You know, there's a kind of a constitutive tightness with traditional shamatha. It's a bit tight, you know. Interestingly, it leads to calm because the mind quietens down and all of the anxiety and worry and stuff that rises, it does calm down through shamatha. But this way it calms down a lot more quickly. A lot more quickly. Because we're not worried about whatever happens. We're not trying to make our experience in any way different. Our experience is perfect as it is. It's absolutely fine. We don't need to have total non-thought. Not a problem. Thought is not a problem. We don't need to have total quiet. We don't have to have, you know, we don't have to be in a cave in the mountains. Suburban backyard with the mowers going on next door is fine. It's all just ornament of your awareness. It's all fine. And in time, those things don't even enter your cognitive mind. They're there as part of your awareness. It's not like they're not there. You definitely hear them, but you don't, I suppose you don't react to them. You're not going, oh, a lawnmower. Let it go. It's all natural. It's just there as an ornament of your awareness in the same way that bird song is, the same way that the breeze on your skin is, the same way that your breathing is, the same way that, thoughts are. They're all just there as ornaments of your awareness, and it's all fine. And you feel completely okay. It doesn't matter that you're not in a pristine, quiet environment. That being said, occasionally taking yourself off to a quiet environment is very helpful because it helps you to relax, All right, so with Nepa, also, the path of joy is not exactly the same as Dzogchen, but it is very similar to Dzogchen Semde in that we have these, what we call four Nal-Yors, right? I'm trying to avoid this word yoga. So we have these four Nal-Yors, right? 4 ways of recognizing our natural condition. It's not the same as the yogas of Naropa or yogas of Niguma. It's not the same. And these 4 yogas are basically, I won't use the Tibetan words, except for Nepa, because I think it's important to differentiate between Shamata and Nepa. They're basically, basically Shamatha or Nepa, Vipassana, or what they call movement, right? And then there's Dzogchen, and then there's it's how to translate that word? I won't use so abiding in a state in which everything is self-liberated is a clumsy way to say it, and that's when really practice is happening. Everything is self-liberated in its own time and in its own way, without intervention, without effort. There's absolutely no effort anymore in that 4th Naljaw. It's just all effortless, letting everything be, and it all just self-liberates in its own way, and it's all just cool. It's all chill. It's all okay, So that's the thing. And the thing about the joy practice is that it enables your shamatha, because remember the joy practice includes shamatha, which is really nepa, combined with a rising joy at the beginning. And the joy, which is the radiance of our natural condition, so there's lots of lamas, including the Buddha, who said that the immeasurables, so joy, love, compassion, and evenness or equanimity, are the radiance of our natural condition. They're the radiance of our natural condition. So they're not separate from our natural condition. It's like the sun and its rays, and they shine on everything impartially. So they're the rays of our natural condition. And because of that, when we rest in joy, it means that our meditation moves through those 4 Naljaws or yogas naturally. It just happens all very naturally because by connecting with the radiance of our natural condition, the natural condition then is present, and then we're able to move through those states more naturally and quickly. Okay, so that's Nepa. I might take a little bit of an itty bitty break so that we can have water, amenities break, etc., and then we'll come back. So we need to talk, next we're going to talk about conduct, which I'll do very briefly because I've already talked about this a lot. But there's 2 aspects to conduct, right? There's the precepts, but then there's the view taken into worldly life. That's a very Dzogchen and Path of Joy specific thing.